Let me tell you about a ghost that is haunting the American landscape. It isn't found in the abandoned factories of the Rust Belt or the shadows of the Great Depression. This ghost lives in the bright suburban kitchens of North Carolina. It sits in the passenger seat of brand new SUVs in the suburbs of Dallas. It follows the young professional in Seattle who just signed a lease for a $3,000 a month apartment. It is the ghost of the rich broke American. Statistically, if you live in the United States and earn the median household income, you are in the top 1% of the entire global population. You have access to more technology, more food, and more credit than the kings of the ancient world. By every historical metric, you are rich. And yet, if I asked you how you felt when you opened your banking app this morning, rich is probably the last word you would use. You feel a weight. A low-grade, persistent anxiety that whispers that you are one car breakdown, one medical bill, or one restructuring at your company away from a total collapse. You are earning more than your parents ever dreamed of, but you have less peace than they ever had. Today, we are going to dive into the dark psychology of the American economy. We are going to use the timeless wisdom from The Psychology of Money to understand why your brain is being hacked by lifestyle inflation. We're going to look through the lens of Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad to see why the American dream has become a liability. And we're going to go back 6,000 years to the richest man in Babylon to find the laws you are breaking every single day. This isn't just about math. It's about the scarcity wound. By the end of this journey, you will understand why you feel so poor and exactly how to start feeling and being actually free. In Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki introduces us to the cash flow quadrant. Most Americans are taught to live in the E quadrant, the employee. We are told that the path to wealth is a high-paying job. But in 2026, the high-paying job has become the ultimate trap. Think about the American six-figure salary. In many parts of this country, $100,000 is no longer a fortune. It's a survival wage. Why? Because the U.S. tax system is designed to punish the E quadrant more than any other. When you get a raise, the government is the first person at the table. They take 25, 30, sometimes 40% of your life energy before you can even buy a loaf of bread. But the tax man isn't the biggest thief. The biggest thief is lifestyle creep. Morgan Housel in The Psychology of Money tells us that wealth is what you don't see. But the American psyche is built on what is seen. When your income goes from $50,000 to $100,000, you don't keep your $50,000 lifestyle and save the rest. You upgrade. You move from a one-bedroom to a three-bedroom. You move from a used Honda to a financed Audi. You haven't increased your wealth. You've just increased your burn rate. You are now a high-performance engine that requires twice as much fuel just to stay idle. You feel broke because you are broke. You have traded your future freedom for a present-day performance of success. Housel explains a phenomenon that defines the American struggle, the man in the car paradox. You see a man driving a $90,000 Porsche. You think, wow, that guy must be rich. If I had that car, people would think I'm a success. But here is the glitch in our programming. You don't actually look at the man in the car and think he's cool. You imagine yourself in the car and think you are cool. The person in the Porsche is invisible to you. And guess what? You are invisible to everyone else when you drive that car. No one is as impressed with your possessions as you are. Yet, we spend money, we don't have to buy things, we don't need to impress people we don't even like. This is the social liability. In The Richest Man in Babylon, the first rule is to start thy purse to fattening. But in America, we start our image to fattening. We use credit cards, the modern chains of Babylon, to finance a version of ourselves that we can't actually afford. We feel broke because we are competing in a game that has no finish line. As Housel says, moving the goalposts is a recipe for misery. If your definition of enough is always 10% more than what you currently have, you will be a pauper in your mind, even if you are a millionaire in your bank account. Why are we like this? Why is the wealthiest nation in history also the most anxious? Napoleon Hill in Think and Grow Rich spent decades studying the fear of poverty. He called it the most destructive of the 6 basic fears. In America, our financial blueprint is often inherited from parents who survived the Great Depression, the stagflation of the 70s, or the 2008 housing collapse. We carry a scarcity wound. This wound tells us that money is a rare, fleeting resource. Paradoxically, this fear makes us spend more impulsively. Because we don't believe we can ever truly be safe, we settle for the small safety of a new purchase. We buy a new television or a designer bag because it gives us a temporary hit of power in a world where we feel financially powerless. This is the psychological glitch. We think we are buying happiness, but we are actually just medicating our fear of the future. We feel broke because we are trying to fill an internal hole with external objects. As Hill points out, riches begin with a state of mind. If your state of mind is one of lack, no amount of currency will ever make you feel abundant. Here is where the unique philosophy of Robert Kiyosaki really hits the American audience. We have been told for generations that your home is your biggest asset. Rich Dad says, an asset puts money in your pocket. A liability takes money out of your pocket. The average American rich-broke person has 70% of their net worth tied up in their primary residence. They pay property taxes, they pay interest to the bank, they pay for the new roof, and they pay for the lawn care. On a monthly basis, that house is a massive liability. You feel broke because you are house poor. You are living in a mansion that is eating your future. You have committed the Babylonian error. You have made your dwelling a drain instead of a profitable investment. Kiyosaki teaches that the rich buy assets first. They buy the rental property, the stock portfolio, or the business. Then, they let the income from those assets pay for their luxury home. The rich, broke American does the opposite. They use their earned income to buy the biggest liability they can qualify for, leaving them with zero seed grain to plant for the future. 6,000 years ago, the city of Babylon was the wealthiest in the world. George S. Clason in The Richest Man in Babylon tells us that the reason for this wasn't magic. It was the adherence to universal laws. The first law is simple. A part of all you earn is yours to keep. But in America today, we have a biological and social glitch that makes this law feel like a death sentence. When we get paid, we pay the landlord, we pay the car company, we pay the grocery store and the subscription services. We pay everyone else first, and then we try to save what is left over. But as Clason points out, there is never anything left over. The desires of man are a bottomless pit. If you wait until the end of the month to be rich, you will be broke forever. To be unique in the American market, you must flip the script. You must pay yourself before you pay a single bill. This is what Kiyosaki calls the power of self-discipline. If you don't have the discipline to pay yourself first, you will never move from the employee quadrant to the investor quadrant. You are essentially telling the world that the cable company's profit is more important than your freedom. Morgan Housel's most profound chapter in The Psychology of Money is titled Confounding Compounding. He points out that Warren Buffett's fortune isn't just due to him being a good investor. It's because he's been a good investor for 3/4 of a century. The rich, broke American feels broke because they lack the delayed gratification that Housel preaches. We want the win now. We want the 10 times return this year. But wealth is a game of endurance, not speed. Housel teaches us that being reasonable is better than being rational. A rational person tries to beat the market every day. A reasonable person realizes that the market is a chaotic, emotional beast, so they just stay in a low-cost S&P 500 index fund and let time do the heavy lifting. You feel broke because you are looking at the now. You are looking at your balance today and comparing it to the influencer's balance on Instagram. But wealth is the long-term accumulation of boring gains. If you can't survive the boring middle, you don't deserve the spectacular end. Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich introduces the mastermind, the idea that you cannot achieve greatness alone. In America, we are obsessed with the self-made myth, but no one is truly self-made. If you are a high earner who feels broke, look at your mastermind. Who are the 5 people you spend the most time with? If they are all on the left side of the cash flow quadrant, the E's and the S's, then their poverty consciousness is infecting you. They talk about working hard and getting a raise. You need a mastermind that talks about acquiring assets and tax strategies. As Kiyosaki's rich dad taught him, the rich don't work for money. They work to acquire the assets that produce the money. If your inner circle doesn't understand the difference between a 401k and a rental property, you are being held back by a collective ceiling of ignorance. The final piece of the puzzle is Hill's chapter on persistence. Building wealth in a society designed to make you spend is an act of rebellion. It is a war against your own biology and the most sophisticated advertising algorithms in history. Hill tells the story of the man who quit digging 3 feet from gold. Most Americans start a savings plan. They start an investment account, but the moment the market dips or a shiny object appears, they stop. They sell their stocks at the bottom. They raid their emergency fund for a vacation. They quit 3 feet from the moment where compounding would have turned their seed grain into a forest. You feel broke because you haven't given your money enough time to grow its own children. In Babylon, they called this making thy gold multiply. Your dollars are your slaves. Every time you spend $1 on a want, you are killing a slave that could have worked for you for the next 50 years. So, why are Americans rich but feel broke? Because we are using the information age opportunities with industrial age mindsets. We are trying to build 21st century wealth using 20th century poor dad rules. 1. Redefine the asset. If it doesn't pay you, it's not an asset. 2. The 10% law. Pay yourself first, or you are a slave to your creditors. 3. Wealth is unseen. Stop buying things to impress people who don't care. 4. Mindset over math. Control your ego, or your ego will control your bank account. The American dream isn't a house with a white picket fence and a massive mortgage. The American dream is autonomy. It is the ability to walk away from anything that doesn't serve your soul. Stop running for the mirage. Stop performing for the crowd. Start building the gold pipes that Klassen spoke of. Guard your treasures from loss. And most importantly, have the persistence to let the confounding compounding of time turn your small, boring habits into a life of spectacular freedom. The treadmill only stops when you decide to step off.